get started. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today for our Women in Music panel. We have an evening of really great conversation ahead of us. A really big thank you to our teams at the Digilogue and Industry in Spanglish, as well as all of our amazing panelists for their time today. My name is Laura, and I am the Artist Relations Manager over at the Digilogue. I'm currently based out of Atlanta. Before I get started, I did want to take a moment and acknowledge what happened here in Atlanta last night. As most of you probably know by now, there was an act of domestic terrorism which claimed the lives of 8 innocent individuals, including 6 Asian American women. There's been a huge uptick in hate crimes against Asian folks within the past year, 68 of those affecting Asian American women specifically. Given this panel, and obviously given that it's Women's History Month, I wanted to take a moment to shed some light to that in particular. I know it's hard to proceed with business as usual when things like this happen. So for those of you who are in this panel today, for anybody that is watching at home, for our colleagues, friends, anybody that's part of our community that identifies with the Asian American community, we just wanted to let you know that we see you and we acknowledge your pain. We mourn this loss deeply with you, and we just wanted to take a moment to acknowledge that. Putting that aside, we're here for the panel today. So like I mentioned, my name is Laura, and I am the Artist Relations Manager over at the Digilogue. For those of you who are not familiar, we are a global community-driven music and tech platform. We focus on educational conversations, career resources, and a lot of really great artist discovery content. Some of you may be familiar with our newsletter, which highlights music and tech news, as well as our Music Career Monday posts, which highlight opportunities within the music and tech industry. Like I mentioned, we have tons of really great artist discovery programming. We have recently launched marquee playlists via AudioMac that feature music from artists in our community all over the world. We have ongoing series such as Artist of the Month and our new Artist to Watch series, which I'm very proud to have been a part of. If you aren't part of our community already, I highly encourage you to tap in and learn more about all the great things that we have to offer. One of the things that we pride ourselves in being a global community is that the minorities are actually the majority here, and we're very proud that both our team and our community reflect that. If any of you have any additional questions, I'm happy to be a resource. You can definitely find me on LinkedIn or Instagram at Laura Coronado. I'd be thrilled to connect with you guys and be able to help you guys in anything that you may need. Many thanks again to our friends at Industry in Spanglish and all of our wonderful panelists for their time. I'm so excited to learn about all these wonderful ladies that we have lined up for today, and I wish you all a very happy Women's Month.
Thank you, Laura. Hey, everyone. I'm Vanessa. I'm one of the co-founders of the Industry in Spanglish, and our platform was created to expose, educate, inspire, and most of all, unite Latinos within the entertainment space. And to get things started, I'd like to introduce our incredible team member and moderator, a woman of many talents, Jennifer Mota. Jennifer is a multimedia creative, a journalist, a Dominican dembow historian. So I'll let you take it away from here, Jenny. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Vanessa. Thank you so much for the intro, and thanks everyone here who's taking a part of this, the panelists, and also our attendees. I am so excited to have this conversation tonight, but even more excited to get to know more about these powerful women and how they navigate this industry, and how not only are they making space, rightfully making space, but taking up space as well. So without further ado, I'm gonna present our phenomenal panelists. So we're gonna start with Rebekah Espinosa, who's the Senior Director of Marketing at 1824. Rebekah, welcome.
Gracias, I'm so happy to be here.
Thank you so much for being a part of this. Next up, we have Marjua Estevez, writer with words in Rolling Stone, Billboard, TIDAL, Vibe, so many more. Welcome.
Hey everyone, thank you for having me.
Next up, we got Mary Nunez, VP of Sync at Warner Chappell Latin. Welcome, Mary.
Buenas tardes. Hi, everyone. Good to see you. Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you for being here. And we also have Pamela Velez, Grammy Award-winning engineer. Welcome, Pamela.
Gracias, muchas gracias por la invitación, Jenny.
Thank you. So I like to start off normally with a question that kind of gives our attendees a bigger insight on your day-to-day and who you guys are. So I wanted to ask if you guys can tell us about yourself and pretty much how you got into your career and even if what your day-to-day look like. So Marjua, let's start with you.
Oh, God. Hola, ¿qué tal? Hello, everyone. Hola, ¿qué tal? My name is Marjua Estevez. I was born in Washington Heights and raised between the Bronx and West Tampa. How I got my start in the industry, I'll say that I attended an HBCU, and through that, my first internship was at the Source, and after completing that internship, I sort of like, it was one door that opened after the other. And, I graduated from Florida A&M University, and I immediately got my start. I immediately got like a sort of like a part-time job at the starklife.com. Shout out to Amy Andrews, who is a Haitian woman. And I have to say that because Black women have always been the people who have given me my start, particularly in this industry. And then from there, I sort of just, I went to Double XL, I went to Hip Hop Wired, I did some work at MTV Iggy. And then I really got this really great opportunity while I was earning my MFA at Pratt Institute, this really unique opportunity to start a column at Vibe, which is a legacy Afro-American brand in hip hop and R&B. And I got the unique opportunity to start a column, a vertical named Viva. And because my superiors really didn't know much about so-called Latinidad, I took it upon myself to exclusively focus on Latinidad from a Black Caribbean lens. And so much of my work has been dedicated to that. And, obviously there's branded content and money involved. And sometimes, I have to produce work that I'm not really too proud of or that I don't care about. But for the most part, my time at Vibe was a really big sort of like climax or pinnacle, because it really set the foundation of what I was going to do thereafter.
Thank you so much. So dope. Pamela, tell me more about you and how you got into what you do.
I grew up in DR. I'm from Santo Domingo. And I pretty much got into music through the guitar. That was my first instrument. And then from there, growing up, I was in different bands. And when I moved to America, I went straight to DC, the DC area. And I stopped playing because the people that was around me wasn't really at the same level I was at the moment. And but through school, I learned about a program in audio production that I could go to college to. And then that's what I did. I figured that if I was already in the US, I might have had more opportunities than if I would have done it in DR, right? So I took the risk. I went to school. I graduated in 3 years. I got my bachelor's. And I started working at a studio in Maryland for a few years. And when I started developing some artists over there, opened up some opportunities in the local Latino scene that there was none at the moment, right? And from there, when I saw that there was not much I could do, I decided to take the risk to come to Miami. And I started working at A12 Studios. And that's pretty much where my professional career launched. If I will say that, I've been here for 3 years, and I've been just, taking risks, sacrificing a lot, and making sure, I make things happen. And that's pretty much what got me into music,
Amazing. Thank you so much, Pamela. Mary, tell us about yourself and how you stepped into the industry.
Bueno, actually, I'm a West Coast girl. I grew up in Los Angeles. I feel like my music career, my whole life has been elements of music. My background is bicultural and very diverse. My mother's of Mexican descent. She's has influences of French behind her, from Jalapa, Veracruz, Mexico. And my dad, he's a Scot-Irish. So I grew up in a very bicultural, very kind of hipster family where music was really important in culture. So everyone was very musical in my family, and that sort of influenced me as a child and in my young adult. However, I didn't get into music until I was in my 40s. My first career was in tourism and hospitality in the business, always in international, and I think my languages always helped, speaking Spanish, falando Portuguese, Portuguese as well, and English. And my love of obviously Brazilian culture and music coming from the Americas eventually propelled me to leave my career. And I started off as an admin working for BMG in Los Angeles. And then I moved into being like a music executive where I was selling libraries to all of Latin America with base in LA. And then I decided to have a family. And my husband is Cubano Americano, New Yorker. We decided to come to Miami. And so I've been here now for 13 years, and I had a great career with Sony Music, Entertainment Latin. I was with them for a while, and now I moved over to the publishing side about 2 years ago, and I'm really stoked with Warner Chappell.
Amazing. Thank you so much for sharing, Mary. Rebekah, tell us about yourself and how you stepped into the industry.
Yeah, let me condense it because it's quite dense for being such a short history. But started in music very young. I grew up in Denver, Colorado. And like you said, Mary, in a very mixed background, Mexican American and French on the other side, and just a multitude of cultures surrounding me. Really wanted to get into and fell in love with poetry and hip hop super young, and always wanted to be in New York, and fell in love with Harlem as a very young girl, and was like, I want to be the Spanish Rose in Harlem. That's the goal. But I was 10, right? So let's figure it out. Went to school for music business and got an internship to go to at Sony Music while I was in college. Moved here while I was still in college. Was able to like transfer, thankfully, a lot of my stuff to online, which for anybody that's joining that's in college now, that should be even easier since we're so remote. But then from there was able to catapult into a number of different areas, including publishing and A&R, entertainment law, and distribution, and then ended up on the label side in marketing through a number of different, hookups and relationships that I value over the years. But super happy with the people that have always supported me. I literally owe them everything, and I am here to do just the same for the people that I can uplift. So it's been an incredible journey just to get to even this spot, but I've been in New York 13 years now, and it just keeps getting better and better.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Rebekah. When we often talk about women in música and the industry, obviously we talk about representation, especially considering how much the industry and music benefits off of women consumership, but also Black women creativity and trends and culture. And aside of all that representation and not seeing that, in rooms, what else do you guys feel are the biggest issues affecting women in musical professional spaces? Mary, I'm gonna start with you. Oh, you're muted.
Sorry about that. I think some of the biggest issues that are affecting women and music right now are not just issues that affect women in music. They affect us in kind of all industries, And I think we're living in a time where we're exploring roles as women as well, And I think it's really important that women empower themselves, because we tend as women want to please others. And I think right now it's a really important time for women to sort of like lead by example, being able to do these sort of events, extending the branch, if you will, to others, younger generations that are like interested in the business. And I really feel that, women today are leading the careers of artists and writers, and we are kind of leading a lot of things. So from a perspective as an executive in the music business, I can say that, ladies, and gentlemen, I think it's important to kind of just step into the roles that you want to. You know, as a young adult, I think it's important for you to sort of kind of craft your story and have like a clear kind of visibility of what you want to do. And I think more than ever now is a great time, especially in this social kind of disorder we're living, not just in the US and in Latin America, but globally.
Yeah, I agree. I really do think that mentorship, passing the mic and making space is extremely important in navigating and pushing, you know, making more space for women. Pamela, how do you feel about this question?
It's interesting. Look, as an engineer and a producer, you know, we're in the forefront of the studio. It's not like some of the executive jobs where you're more behind the scenes. We gotta deal with a lot of things. Sometimes you get these men that think that you're less important just because you're a female. But like I've said before in many different interviews, it's just a matter of dominating the space that you're in and showing whoever is in the room, it don't matter who it is, female or male, that you are capable of doing exactly the same thing they do, the same way or even better. And like Mary said, it's just opening up more opportunities. If the doors are not opening up for us, we gotta go get it, right? Not being scared, not giving up. The music industry is hard, not only for females, but also for men. It's hard. So being a female, you gotta work 10 times harder, 1,000 times harder. To me, it's just a matter of opening up your own opportunities and not being scared. You gotta take the risk. You gotta own it, own your position, and kill it. Whenever you step into a room, do what you're there supposed to do. That's it. If you are capable of showing everybody what you can do, they won't say anything, you know.
Own it. I love that. Rebekah, how do you feel about this question?
I mean, I can echo Pamela so much, because I think if you don't just go into a room like you belong there, you can be quickly exited, right? Like, people are easy to dismiss anybody, but especially women of color. And I think if you don't step in like you own it, then you're missing out on your opportunities. And my mother always used to say, fake it till you make it, right? Like, just own it, believe in it, act like you can do it until somebody tells you can't. And what are they going to say? No? Then okay, go somewhere else and do it. So I feel like we just have to step into these spaces and step into these rooms as with the confidence and with the belief that we do belong. I work, obviously, and we all do, in this industry that is can be super complex with male and female roles, traditional ones, right? But I think that they're changing, and I think that there's a respect of the women perspective that is taking place. It's taking shape. I can't say that it's fully, taken shape just yet, but it's getting there. I think we're definitely on our way. I've worked with certain men and women who aren't supportive. I can't just say it's about men. Women, I know plenty of women who aren't supportive and who will be on supportive panels all the time saying women for women. But yeah, I've been in rooms where you aren't as supportive of the people that you say you are. So for me, it's about uplifting the people. And how does that reflect in the people that you hire? How does that reflect in the people that are your mentees, the people that you're inspiring? You can't just talk it, you have to literally act it out. I'm grateful to work for not just a company, but for a division within Universal Music Group that has a number of men that are all about supporting the women, right? My boss is all about how can we uplift you guys? How can we give you guys a platform to go and run with it and really build a platform for the people? He knows in himself that he is of the majority and has the privilege and knows that he wants to be able to utilize that for all of us. So I'm grateful for that and also want to be used as a vessel. But it's important that we just walk in the room, because if we don't walk in there like we own it and that like we do belong, we give them even more reason to take it from us.
Thank you, Rebekah. Marjua, what do you believe are some of the biggest issues that we're facing?
First and foremost, pay and racial equity. Sorry, I'm tongue-tied. I think in all the years that I participated in this industry, which makes 10 now, I've only had maybe one Black woman boss or director. and that was at BET. And I worked at BET the year of 2019. So that's recently for all intents and purposes. I think that there needs to be more representation because that's untapped storytelling, untapped lived experiences, untapped like just jewels that deserve a place in the world, in the public. And then the other thing that I think is also one of the biggest issues affecting women in music, but not just in music, it's like Mary said, it's also across all boards. But in my experience, it's been heavily emphasized because I've been obviously participating in the hip hop and so-called urban space. So for me, the levels and lengths of like sexual harassment and gender-based like biases, no matter what building I had to walk in, no matter what publication it was, no matter who I had to answer to, I had to every single day equip myself mentally and emotionally to walk into a room full of men, usually and largely white men. And I had to equip myself with the language, with the know-how, with the confidence that didn't come easily to speak up for myself, to assert myself, and to correct in real time what is wrong. And that took practice, that took evolution. That there in retrospect, there are moments where I should have said something and I didn't have the language to stick up for myself. You know, so it's one of those things where like, you know, you face sexual harassment from the artists to the artist representatives, down to the producers, down to maybe, depending on where you're at, you're higher up. I've experienced literally all of that. And so I think that that's something that needs to be rectified, and we can begin to rectify by having men themselves speak up, see something, say something, break that code, that bro code. Excuse my French, because that absolutely needs to be dismantled because it's bullshit. And that, yeah, so I think those are some of the most pressing issues that I think yeah, some of the most pressing issues facing women in music today, particularly Black and brown women.
Yes, I agree with that so much. And I feel like it's a conversation that's been brought up a lot, especially this past year with so many editors being blasted out on Twitter, people in the music industry. And I think it's so hard sometimes because we are in a very relaxed industry where we can just hop into an event and we're drinking, some people, you know, doing drugs, and it's like things can get very blurred. And it's been such a struggle, especially for women, because, you know, we're in an industry where a lot of our higher ups and the gatekeepers are men. And there's so many situations of women literally being groomed and, you know, given opportunities, and they have this idea of like, oh, I feel indebted to you. And it's been a huge conversation. And I'm really glad that that was brought up too, because it is something that we should be talking more about, especially as women. For example, like what Marjua said, and just really understanding when something just doesn't feel right, especially the men in our industry. If y'all see something, say something. And I agree with all of that. Because it is something that highly affects us, specifically more my darker skinned sisters and brown sisters, you know. And then speaking of which, I'm sorry, what happened?
I was just gonna say, I think to that, one of my guy friends, dark skinned Puerto Rican guy, was even saying the other day, like, if I'm part of my French, but I'm the asshole if I see something and I don't say something on behalf of men. How do I not stand up for the women that I see? I know that dude's playing whatever kind of game. I know that he's not doing right. So who am I as a man if I don't stand up for the people that I love and support? So I feel like that's what I say when I mean like having and galvanizing support, not just within women. You only go so far. You always need the people of privilege to be your advocate as well. So I think with that, like you definitely have to lean into like bringing it up as an issue, but knowing, hey, the guys need to rally too. We all have to rally around it, right?
Yeah, of course. And then just bringing up too, I have to come back to this. I really want to take a moment and revisit June of 2020 and the George Floyd's protest, right? Because just being part of an industry, especially not just let's forget Anglo, but specifically the Latin industry, where sometimes even having a conversation about race has always been so difficult because so many of our countries have this ideology of that we're just one race, and like just pushing this conversation forward, right? And seeing so many brands and artists and platforms post statements and Black squares denouncing racism, right? We all form part of an industry that has historically failed Black artists. And in knowing that the trends in music is Black, but the faces and gatekeepers aren't, you know, I'm very curious to know how each and every one of you are playing an active role in creating space or hope to create space and visibility for Black, specifically Black women, right? Because I want to focus right now on Black women in an industry that doesn't. So Rebekah, I want to start with you.
It was my practice way before 2020, right? I would be doing a disservice to history and to the people that raised me, the people that were my best friends growing up, to every woman that has rallied for rallied support for me, has echoed their support in me being in this industry, for the artists that I work with, and for the many colors across the Latino and the Black community that should be of service to this. Like, this is, I would be doing a major disservice if I didn't acknowledge them on a daily basis. But I understand, I think we have to understand where colors lie. And you can understand your lens and your perspective, but you also have to be able to understand societal's perspective and lens, right? I think we really have to go back and understand. And everybody loves hip hop, everybody loves R&B, everybody wants to salsa, la, 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 but do you understand the why? Do you understand the history? Are you going back and understanding like how we got to this point, right? You can't just go off and enjoy and then run with it. Like that can't be how this works. We really have to go back to square one and ask ourselves, like, what are we doing to uplift the Black community? On a personal level, I in my entire career, I've always worked in hip hop and R&B and in the Latin space. I've worked with some of the most amazing Black women that I can count on, some of my best friends as well. But I also understand privilege because of my skin tone, right? I also understand privilege because of the way I was raised and when I walk into a room. And I understand that I can either use that as a disservice or I can use that as a vessel for other people. And I can use that as a voice. And I think that that's the transition. I understand colorism within the Latino community. I was raised around it, right? My best friend, both Mexican-American, she's, you know, a Black Mexican, and I'm clearly a white Latina. And we're sitting there in the sun as little girls, and mom is saying, "Hey, Rebekah, get in the sun. You're not dark enough." And she ain't saying, "Yeah," to my friend, "Get out of the sun. You're gonna get too dark." Right? So this idea of colorism growing up, like, was ingrained in my head. So going into it in this industry was no different. Like, how do we dismantle it? How do we say, what's the problem here? There's no problem. I'm very fortunate that I have two amazing Black women that work directly with me every single day on my team. Incredible women, as well as an incredible young Black man who's paving the way for many things. I'm proud to work with them every day. So I think it's emulated in who you hire, who you listen to, where you get your information, and then how you then give it back out to the world. Like right now, simultaneously to this panel, our team is hosting a conversation called Black Film Rising, which we'll be putting out later, but it's about a conversation with Black filmmakers and creating space for Black creatives in this business. That's super important to us on a daily basis, long before 2020, right? But how, because it is now at the forefront, how do we rally support, and not fake support? I don't want AT&T support. I don't want bandwagon support, right? We want people who are seriously invested in uplifting people that, you know, that you otherwise don't know. If you don't know about it, my thought is always ask a question. Ask a question how you could be more involved, because you're not going to learn more about the Latino or Hispanic community if you aren't befriending or asking questions of your coworkers. I can't even believe that, you know, it'll be almost a year since last June. I'm proud that my team, we decided to take a break for a week and a half and give the people on our team space, and then allow people to ask questions. I think you have to open it up. You have to open it up to the color issue in America, because the color issue in America is very different than the color issue in Latin America, in Africa, and abroad, but it all roots in the same ridiculousness, right? So we have to get back to that and ask the questions and be willing to have the open conversations with ignorant people. I think that's the only way that we're actually going to be able to hopefully educate and get to a new place.
Thank you, Rebekah. Mary, I'm gonna move on to you.
Yeah, well, sounding off kind of like what Rebekah's saying, I mean, I think last year was a tragic event that happened in front of all of us, what happened with George Floyd. And I think it was like a real retrospect and introspect moment for humans, not just in the United States, to kind of really evaluate where their mental space is with understanding racial disparity and racial disorder. I think working in the music industry, we're really blessed that we do celebrate a lot of different razas and diversity and colors. I mean, that's part of the reasons I think why all of us are in this business as well. And I think that what has happened is that this awakening that is happening is also made people be conscious about content that's being delivered, new content, social disparities. I can give you an example of what we're doing, for example, in Brazil with the Afro-Brazilian community. Emicida, who's one of our biggest writers, last year in the month of November, they celebrate Black History Month, for example. We celebrated through content that we delivered out through Netflix to tell the story of the struggles of the Afro-Brazilians in Brazil. I think here in the US, we still have a lot of work to do with Afro-Latinos in the US. I can see it and I see it every day. I'm really proud that at the Warner Music Group, we're very attuned with diversity. That's part of the reasons that I love the Warner Music family. Coming from Sony Music Entertainment, I can tell you that it's a very, very different company. If you decide to work in the corporate space, I think you as a custodian of being a corporate officer in companies, you have an obligation to really kind of like be the sounding board. And I think it's important to be 100% vested in social equality, period, as a person, even if you're in the industry or you're not. I know at Warner Chappell, we have a high percentage of Black composers and producers and writers. So, I think there's a lot of work that needs to be done. But I think a lot of it starts with your own self-analysis and saying, what can I do to move in the right direction?
Thank you, Mary. Pamela, I'm gonna move on to you.
Just to piggyback off of Mary just said, I think it starts with us, right? We gotta paint the world the way we want to see it. We have these conversations about what we have to do in order to make these changes, but it's just a matter of doing them. More women of color gotta step into the chairs on it, right? If you don't see these opportunities, create these opportunities for you. I'm gonna say two words, right? Tolerance and respect. And every human being gotta lead by those two words. And that's the only way we can change any issues that happen. I remember back in June, July 2020, even my cousin was arrested in DC in one of the protests, and the police officers searched his bag without having a warrant, right? He was arrested that night. Two of my business partners are Black. One of the writers that I have in my team is Afro-Latino, and I care about them. I care about the people that it's in my life, and I want to see them do better. And it's a matter of understanding the history, understanding where we all come from, being tolerant and painting the world the way we want to see it. That's it.
Thank you, Pamela. Marjua, I'm going to move on to you.
Yes. I want to piggyback off first with what Rebekah said about encouraging non-Black and Indigenous folk to use their privilege. I think that's huge. You have your privileges. You have them for a reason. Use them, right? So and I'll give you an example of that, and I'll say that there was a moment in my career, I want to say when I was working at Billboard, I think, Billboard or Vibe, one of those. And I got invited to speak on a Red Bull panel. And the discussion was going to be on the roots of reggaeton and the evolution and the offshoot of perreo. Very Black music, very Black genres. I was the darkest person on, well, I would have been the darkest person on that panel. What ended up happening was that I couldn't do it for personal reasons. It was a paid gig, by the way. It's a very great check. I couldn't do it for personal reasons, so they had to fill my seat either way. And what ended up happening was that there was no one Black on that panel, you know, and so there was a very authoritative voice attached to that panel, and she's very privileged, and she's a white person in the world, no matter how you cut it, no matter what language she speaks. And someone who's very privileged and very, very, very educated as well. She's had privileges of traveling the world, of learning the music, of learning the culture, of learning, et cetera, et cetera. And I feel like in that moment, when I saw the end results of that panel, I feel like a part of the work in making space or visibility for Black and Indigenous women in any space, period, is also learning and practicing, knowing to remove yourself from the conversation and advocating for someone who should be a part of this. This person didn't necessarily have to say, I don't want to be a part of this. She could have said something like, yo, I'd love to have this conversation, but who else is on your panel? Do you have Black and Indigenous women on it? Do you have the right people talking about this very Black genre? That didn't happen. And so that's just one example. I feel like if you are someone privileged, you should know you should know the space that you occupy in the world, no matter what avenue, no matter what space. And you should be like, yo, I think so-and-so needs to be a part of this. I think that we need to include Black voices in here. I think we need to include Black women voices in here. That needs to happen. That's a part of the practice, the so-called proverbial work. If you are calling yourself a culture activist, which this person is, if you are calling yourself a culture activist, you need to talk the talk and walk the walk. That's one. And then two, to go off what Mary was saying, we do have a lot to do about, I think that, because she mentioned having a lot of work to do here, stateside. We have a lot of work to do in Latin America. I'd argue that we are ahead. I would argue that Latin America is light years behind on sex, gender, and racial discourse. So as Black Latinos throughout the Latin America, who were born and raised on the stateside, I think that a part of our duty, a part of our work is building that bridge to our respective motherlands, right? The George Floyd is not a singular happenstance. George Floyd was not the first and it's not the last. A part of my experience as a Black and brown journalist in contemporary USA, and a majority of my time in music was spent reporting on Black bodies, on extrajudicial murders, on Black and Indigenous murders. That's not a fun aspect. That's not a fun part of the job. My time at Vibe, a music legacy brand, I spent the majority of my time writing about these deaths. That's a problem. So it's not a one-time happenstance. I feel like there needs to be real intentional, real structural undoing.
Yeah, and if I can just add real quickly, you know, we're talking about obviously the Black injustices that we're facing, and then obviously the women component, but you know, the brown people too, you know, like I can tell you as a Mexican American, you know, all the disparaging comments that happened last year, all the rhetoric that was happening the last 4 years, you know, like it gets to people's brains and it's horrific. Words matter. It's how you say and how you portray and what you want to say to people. You know, it's really important. And I think, you know, those of us that have the privilege of working in the music industry and entertainment, we have to be sort of those custodians that talk about the stories about los Mexicanos, talk about migrant people, talk about the struggle of what they call essential workers. You know, it's all of us, you know?
Yeah, it is. And I agree. I think there's so much work left to be done, especially in Latin America too, and understanding the complexities of all these intersectionalities, but also us understanding our privilege and how we navigate this space. I do agree that words are power. So any moment you have to be in a room and you understand that you have that space and voice to bring up a conversation on introducing or talking about somebody, of a Black artist, of a black colleague, of a queer colleague, and bringing up those issues at the forefront, I think is extremely important. I loved what everyone had to say today, especially about that. I think that there's so much work left to be done, and I don't think it's right for us to have a panel on women in music and not bring up the struggle, specifically the Black women's struggle in an industry where a lot of our music is Black, and we don't see that in our representation, in our award shows, in our charts. So we have a lot of work left to do.
If I could just add real quick, I think one of the things that I tell the two amazing Black women on my team, Asia and Michelle, all the time, and when I told them 2-3 years ago when we started working together, was if you don't see yourself represented at a table, in this building, in this industry, you have to decide for yourself whether or not you want to force yourself to be at this table and be the sole representative, or go build your own table. Go start your own new table, like go a whole new mesa. Like there's got to be a whole new situation, because if you don't find representation, or if you're finding yourself as the token, you have to decide what that means. And if you don't see representation ahead of you, which I'm hoping that we and they too will be for other women behind them, you have to be willing to force yourself. I literally picture people at a door like barging in saying like, I deserve to be here. And if I don't see representation in the Latino or the Black community, like what does that mean to me? What does that mean for my value system? What does that mean for my morals? Like I have to be able to decide, even for Pamela to have a diverse group of people that she works with every day. If that wasn't the case, what does that mean for her as an engineer? What does that mean for you in putting your music out there? Like, you have to decide at the end of the day what that all means. And I constantly ask my team, ask yourself what it means. And if you don't see yourself at a table, then either decide to create your own or force your way in on it.
Yeah, and I think especially for us, we navigate, all of us on this panel, we navigate with a lot of privilege. So it really is up to us to create these opportunities, because I think I didn't get to mention earlier, se me fue de la mente, but one of the biggest things that really affect specifically Black women are the lack of opportunities. And Marjua, you mentioned this the other day in the conversation with Gata, is something as simple as not understanding our contracts, not understanding how to navigate certain conversations on salary. These are all things that we need in mentorship, right? And Mary mentioned earlier, passing the mic and making space and teaching the younger generation. So that's something that I definitely feel like we should all take from this conversation. And how are we not only just creating our content and visibility, but how are we educating our fellow sisters, right? In terms of like how we're creating space. Thank you so much for everyone saying that. I had to have this combo. So I want to know, what does the future for women in the industry looks like right now? I'm gonna start with you, Pamela.
I feel like now more than ever, we are getting more opportunities. I remember back in 2019, I think that was the last Billboard panel we had before COVID. I remember the women panel was the one that was, there were more people, everybody was waiting for it, which is cool. I feel like we still have a long way to go. It's not gonna change overnight, but a lot more doors are opening, and I feel like kind of like the same thing we were saying. If we want to get doors, if we want to open those doors, we gotta go and get it. We gotta go open up those opportunities, and we have to be ready, right? When those opportunities come, we have to be ready, because if you're not, that's it for you, right? Maybe that door won't open again, or that door's gonna open, it's gonna close some other doors. And if people say no, don't get discouraged. Just keep going. Don't give up. I don't know if you guys saw the Grammys, but a lot of history happened at the Grammys with women, not only women, but also women of color, with Beyonce, Billie Eilish, a whole lot of people. So I feel like the industry is changing, and the future of music is probably female, right? And I'm very excited about that, and I know the change is gonna continue. It's just gonna start with us and everybody around us.
Thank you so much. Marjua, how do you feel?
I can't predict the future. But I would like to say that I love that Pamela is an engineer, first of all, because for me, like, I have always wanted to see like women producers, women that are usually normally historically relegated to the back, to the behind the scenes, really come up front. Like, we talk about the hit boys of the world, right? We talk about the heat makers of the world, right? But like, I want to, what about Pamela's of the world? Like, I would love to, like, I live for the day where we like begin to basically give our flowers and sing our praises to like women producers and women engineers and women directors. And so I do have faith that the tides are turning. um uh Going based off of what Pamela said, like, there is obviously more women involved, more women being outspoken for, more women being outspoken, right? The Cardi B's and the Megan Thee Stallions of the world are making sure that they at least do their part. And so I live to see a day where I can walk into a room and we're like basically like awarding this badass woman producer, like, who's made all these great records. Like, I live for that day. And I think that we're closer than we think we are.
Love that. Mary, what do you feel?
I mean, honestly, I'm probably older than a lot of you. I'm in my mid-50s, you know. I think we're in a really good time in space, in music, and in history. You know, I think it's a good time, like the awakening of women. We're here. We're not going anywhere, you know. We're the creators of life. And at the end of the day, I think, you know, I have some amazing women in my life, obviously my abuelitas and my moms and friends that I looked up to as a young girl. I think it's important to start building those kind of building blocks, having mentorships when you're young. And as a young adult, as you evolve, you know, you start crafting who you are and your sensibility. And como mujer, you know, you want to admire and aspire to other females. You know, I always felt like when I was a little girl, what I liked my mom, she was a teacher, and it was important, you know. Yeah, we didn't grow up on the street, but she respected the people, the migrant people. She taught me about how important it is that when you go into a room, that you talk to the person who is el más humilde, the most humble person, the same as you talk to the president. So it's important to have this sort of, you know, longevity as a female. I think women are better negotiators. I think we have a better empathy towards people. We're better listeners. And I think if we, you know, learn to kind of grow your career when you're young, you're gonna knock it out of the park, you know. I just think, you know, read as much as you can, get to know other people's sensibilities, you know, be curious. You know, las mujeres somos curiosas. O sea, ya por sí, you know, we ask questions, y al que no le guste, pues mire, you know, keep asking, you know.
Thank you, Mary. Rebekah, how do you feel?
Oh my gosh, there's so many things I want to echo. With Mary, I feel like, you know, I always tell people to tap into your tacit knowledge, right? Tap into the things that can't be written in a book. Where did you grow up? What kind of relation do you have to people, right? And use that as your power, right? Coming from a multicultural background and being in so many different rooms and spaces, use that and begin to shape it as an advantage. And how do you bring up and how do you relate to people on a daily basis? I agree, we're more empathetic. I agree that we're great negotiators. How do we begin to resemble that again with who we hire and who do we keep on our teams and who do we begin to speak to or reach out to? Even if it's not directly a hire for you, who are you hiring for contract work? Who are you hiring to, you know, to be the writers? I strongly believe in that. If I feel like I would be, again, like, if I don't advocate for it, I'm letting history write itself. Or do I choose to be a part of the La Historia being written, right? And I want to insert myself in those kind of conversations, but also, you know, going back to us being represented, it's important that the representation is there. I feel like there's a lot of fake, again, I said at the beginning, but there's a lot of fake support. There's a lot of fake representation. You really have to like find your tribe. You really have to devise who you're going to lean into and who you're going to have as support, because there's a lot of people who, you know, and want it and want to be able to use your talents and use your skills, but are they really willing to like invest back or pour back into your talents? I really, I'm encouraged that, like Marjua said, that we're closer than we think, right? Like there are amazing female engineers, there's amazing female executives. I'm encouraged by the women that I see on a daily basis that are choosing to use their platform for good and are choosing to use their platform to uplift other people. I just want us to be cognizant of who we're tapping into. Where are we spending our money, right? Like when I'm hiring somebody or I'm doing a strategic partnership, who are these people? What is their mission? What are they about? How are they giving back? And how can we tap into that charitable aspect in the marketing side? And how can we begin to uplift that? That's just as important in your daily efforts as uplifting an artist, right? What they're tied to and the missions that they're tied to are just as important. So I'm hopeful. I do believe that we are, like you said, like closer than ever, but I'm still waiting for the day when we can all come back on the same, you know, panel and celebrate in a different way. But these kind of conversations definitely pave the way.
Yes, and I, like Marjua said, I can't predict the future either, but I am so hopeful, especially, you know, just having this conversation with you matatanas and like all the work that y'all have been able to do in your career. And it's obviously opened doors for so many other women. So I'm also hopeful. I have a personal question for everyone. And I wanted to start with Pamela. You spoke a bit about already, you know, dominating the space and owning, you know, that confidence in the room. But I want to know more about what A2F Latin is and your role as because you're a lead audio engineer. We got to say that she's a lead audio engineer. And then knowing that for every female producers, there's 49 male producers. And echoing Marjua earlier, like that's so sad. Like when you think of popular music as a whole, women, we are the lead consumership. Like music is written for us to dance to. Like men step into the studio space, like I'm gonna write a song about a girl that's heartbroken and wants to get drunk. That's how reggaeton songs get written, and it's con la mujer en mente. That's a space that a woman can have. So I wanna know more about your role and like more about A2F Latin and the work y'all do.
I'm a lead engineer at A2F Studios. What I do at A2F Latin is basically just a Latin division of what we've been building for the past few years. Me and MC4, our producer, we run what A2F Latin is, and we are basically a multicultural artist incubator. Most of our members, they're all from different ethnicities. We got Dominicans, we got Honduran, we got Salvadorians. Everybody's from a different country, and I think that's what makes us special, right? We learn from everybody's culture. We've been developing this brand for about a year or so. I think development is very important. And what we do, we have a few songwriters and producers that are assigned to the imprint, and we write records for artists, right? We place records. But just to piggyback off of what you just said, Jenny, I feel like as women, we just gotta, we gotta be the leaders of this movement that we're trying to create, right? We're trying to change the industry. We're trying to open up more doors. Like I said before, it's growing. If you want to talk a little bit about the data, I can tell you that in the last 5 years, only credited female producers on top charting songs have risen from 1.8 to 5%, which is a lot. And in the last 7 years, the number of female songwriters on top charting songs have risen from 11% to 14.4%, which is amazing. It's growing a lot. And 38%, if we talk about the Grammys, 38% of the women nominated for the Grammys this year or last year was at about 38%, I believe. I read that earlier today, or 38, actually 13%, and out of that 13%, 38% was women of color. And the industry is just changing, right? This is the best time to be in the music industry, especially if you're doing Latin music. Latin music right now is global, right? It's pop. So for any women out there trying to make it in the music industry, I would say just work hard, sacrifice. You have to sacrifice in order to win. You have to take risks. If you don't take the risks and if you don't go knock at those doors and open up opportunities, the opportunities are not gonna come. So it starts with us. If we wanna make the change, we gotta lead that change.
Pamela, can I ask a follow-up?
Yeah.
Like, especially I think, I mean, it's not always, but like we're always, especially as Latino people or Latinas on this, we're very tied to our families, right? Family and even our friends are a big community of ours. When I heard you say sacrifice, I immediately thought familia, right? Because I've had to do that, right? And I've had to explain to them, which just goes against every nature of how I was raised or who we are, like that kind of sacrifice. What do you say to people who are like, I'm still trying to support my family, I'm still trying to do this? And I think it's very unique, right? I think culturally it's very unique how much we put on family or how much family means to us.
I think it's an education thing. I feel like us creatives, we go against the current. Me personally, sometimes I'm in the studio 18, 24 hours a day and I don't feel it. And I got people at home waiting for me, right? But it's a matter of knowing what we want and why we do it for, right? If we're doing it for our families, are we doing it because we want to open up more doors for other people? We wanna inspire other people. Like at the end of the day, we gotta understand the end goal, and the people that surround us gotta understand the same thing. And I talk about this reality distortion all the time. I think as creatives, we have some type of reality distortion because if we go against society's rules, right? People tells us we gotta work a 9 to 5, go home and do the same thing over and over and be an employer of life. But we want to do exactly the opposite. We want financial freedom. We want to be free. We want to be able to do whatever we want to do and be able to live off of what we love. And most people don't understand that, and we have to understand that as well. We have to educate the people around us so they can be a little bit more understanding of what we do and make sure they know why we do it. You know, at the end of the day, we do it for our people.
Yes. Rebekah, this one's for you. And I think that we have so many college students that tune in and obviously want to learn about everyone's experience. And I think what was pretty dope about your experience is that you scored an internship right off también as a grad, and you worked your way up and navigated different hats with publishing and marketing. I wanted to learn more about what your experience was like that and what advice you can give to a young college grad stepping into the industry right now, hoping to work their way up as well.
Well, the industry's changed a lot in 13 years. I will say that. You know, those internships then, they didn't come with money. So different than the awesome internships that we provide now that do pay, which I'm all for. I had to figure out how to do school, get paid, and do an internship, right? So I was 40 hours a week working for my internship because I refused for them not to see my face before they got there and after I left. And my current boss will remember because he was actually on a team that was next door to the team that I was interning for. But I also had to figure out how to live in New York, which everybody knows is super ridiculously expensive. So I was catering and I was working for a company that was catering these high-end parties. And this all comes off of me being a manager for 3.5 years. I work on a marketing team for an engineering firm. And then I had to humble myself to go be an intern in New York City for a music company that was like, can you please go get my coffee? And I was like, wait a minute, but there's a lot more up here that you could actually tap into, right? And I actually know a lot more than what you're saying, but it was a huge humbling experience for me to just say, okay, where can I be additive? How can I be additive? it's not just about going to get the coffee. What else can I come back when I do bring the coffee, and what can I say that alludes to the fact that I actually know more than I'm just trying to get some internship credits, right? And how can I dive in on a marketing plan? And it took a while. There was a lot of mistrust. This game has a lot of like, who are you? Prove yourself. You know, you gotta earn your stripes to a certain degree. But I don't take that in any other way than like everybody has to pay their dues. I rightfully paid mine. I then went to go work in A&R publishing. I didn't know anything about that. I knew publishing, but that part of it I didn't know. And I was actually applied for a gig right after that. And I remember the guy, like, I've worked my entire time since I was 14 in hip hop and R&B. I'm a poet myself. And this guy was like, I'm sorry, I can't give you this position because you're not Black. And I remember having that conversation and recognizing where he needed representation. And now getting the phone call of like, hey, would love to, catch up with you. Like, yo, you wrote me off so many years ago without understanding even who I know. Maybe I wasn't the right person, but you just wrote me off entirely. Then going into contracts, I was working for the 2010 census. I was in charge of Spanish Harlem, and people I was just trying to figure out how to stay in New York. And I met a guy there, an older guy that was like, I used to work for Polygram. Like, I can hook you up with the guy that is in need. And it was an entertainment lawyer. I learned all about contracts. He was the outside attorney and contractor for Warner Music. And I learned all about contracts there. It was awful. It was disgusting. He used to stand over my shoulder and tell me what to type. But I learned so much about contracts, and I learned, how does outside representation work versus just first having somebody inside. So despite it being a weird, ridiculous experience, I take from it those little things. And from there went into distribution. And again, the things that I would give advice on is don't be afraid to go into a place that isn't necessarily your first choice or directly in your wheelhouse. Because the things that I learned in places that weren't my wheelhouse have benefited me entirely. Like understanding distribution, understanding the supply chain has allowed me to go into spaces and understand lead time, to anticipate lead time for other people. When Pamela is done with the track and we send it, she has an artist and they're done mixing and mastering, okay, that's not the final product, right? There's a whole process that comes after that. And if I myself in marketing understand what to anticipate with that, I can then be more additive to the entire plan to understand, okay, from that point, I know that there's, 12 to 15 steps after that. And the same place, like when do we bring writers in, right? When do we start talking about this song or talking about this artist? Understanding the rollout entirely has really benefited me. And it wasn't something that I ever anticipated, right? I wanted to go into marketing. I was going to be at the label. Like that was the best thing that could have happened to me. And that wasn't necessarily how my experience played out, which you can either look back and say, damn, I wish I had a different experience, or you can say I'm grateful for it because it taught me X, Y, and Z. And just understanding the totality of it. So to answer your last question, Jennifer, I would say that to go into a space, and don't be afraid to go into spaces or learn something that you don't know about at all. It has helped me entirely. I like to interview people too, like, hey, tell me what you do. Just tell me all about it, because how can I be a better asset to you on this side that is going to set you up for success? And I think if we're willing to ask more questions, then we are like, how does your question serve me? But how can what I do best serve you? I think we're going to get ahead a little bit faster.
Love that. Thank you so much, Rebekah. I wanted to move on to Marjua. So we look at Marjua bio and it's so humble. But I remember back in 2017 and I was literally in college studying journalism, broadcast journalism. And I remember seeing a post and it was her spread for Cardi B. It was Cardi B's first cover story. And I remember reading it and I was just like, oh my God, this is a Dominicana from the Heights writing about another Afro-Caribbean woman for an iconic magazine. And it was the first time thinking like, holy, like I could do this. And I think that this is why representation matters so much. But I also remember falling like in a hole of like, after that, always catching up to the conversations and stories that you were writing. And when I stepped into the industry, yeah, the Afro-Latino conversation in Amara was, you know, it was almost like a trend.
Focal point of everyone.
Yeah, like everybody wanted to know about the Afro-Latino and it became a marketing tool. And I remember being labeled sometimes aggressive or like militant because of the uncomfortable feelings that I would have in a lot of Latino white spaces. And something that I've always thought about is, okay, this is me, but how about the women who opened the doors before me that had to speak about these conversations when people didn't even have the range or understood where it was coming at. And something I've always was curious about, it was, what was your personal experience? Because you navigated spaces, you know, where it was not just like white Latinos, but also African-American spaces where sometimes we have to educate our brothers on, yes, there's Black people in Dominican Republic and in Honduras and other places too. And to score such amazing stories, I wanna know how you got that approved. What was your experience like? Tell us.
You know, first of all, thank you very much. You are definitely the reason why, you know, you are a huge reason why I'm participating in this. And I first want to say that I want to say that my experience in this industry has been a beautiful one. As someone who was born in Washington Heights, raised in the Bronx, and raised in West Tampa, Florida. And if you guys have never been to Tampa, West Tampa is very Black. There's a rich Black Cuban history attached to it. It's so just for context purposes. For me, I want to say that it was beautiful. I got to basically make a living off the strength of my word. That's something that I always like, give thanks to my higher beings and et cetera, et cetera. There are people who died before me trying to do the same thing that I am doing actively. And so it's been a beautiful experience. I got to travel to places I never thought I would see. I got to meet heroes so-called heroes that I thought that I would never meet. And I got to say things and create things that I thought that I would never create. So it has been a beautiful experience. But my experience has also has had its fair share of struggles, of biases, of just, you know, hurdles. And I'll give you an example to basically quantify, to give you an example of what my experience has been. When I was working at Billboard, which is a legacy brand that I always dreamed of working for. I was associate editor under the Latin division. And during Black History Month, I, of course, pitched something very relevant, very specific. And it was a call to Afro-Latinos, Black Latino artists in the so-called Latin music industry, and what were their experiences like. It was very straightforward, very frank. And to my surprise, I got a series of responses. There were no questions, no qualms, no anything. I did have one person who I was specifically looking for, who at the time represented Osuna and Chokip Town. To me, those were very, very important people, particularly Osuna, because that was on the onset of his intercontinental like stardom. And what I got in response on the day of the deadline, that I didn't receive anything from these people, what I got in response was a woman on the phone whom I've never met in my entire life prior to that phone call, who's never met me. And I got a chastised. I got someone who was like yelling at me, someone who was just like, yo, I don't know where you're from, but we're all the same in Latin America. We're one, we're this, we're that. You should be ashamed. I feel this is a sign of disrespect. How are you gonna ask this is a white Latina woman who's representing and profiting off of Black artists. I didn't know what to do in that moment. All I knew to do was tell her that I was Dominican and that I know for a fact we don't all have the same lived experiences. And I got off the phone and I told my manager, the person who I responded to at the time, and the only thing that she could afford me was, I'll speak to this person. I'm sorry that you feel this way. And I never heard anything back. I never got an apology. I never anything. And so that is just a very micro level. On the surface, on the grand scheme of things, that's a very micro level experience. But it was something for me that was like a pivotal moment, because in that moment I learned, okay, the work that I'm doing can't stop here. It has to exist outside of this construct, because it's not gonna go where it needs to go. you know, and so I ended up being able to produce something beautiful. I got, you know, I got Vaquero, I got Cuba, I got DJ Hiwe, I got Nettie Scott, I got Deto, I got a bunch of people, but there were voices that were missing. And her artist, the artist that she was representing, they didn't get the message, right? They didn't get the call that I was, because otherwise they absolutely would have responded as Black folk in the world, as Black artists, and just knowing their resume, they would have responded. So that's a micro level example of what my experience has been. There's another thing that I want to point out about my experience is also ideas that Black and brown women maybe bring into the space, and it goes under the radar, it goes ignored, it goes completely, you know, they might give you the runaround, and then maybe when you leave the space, they use your idea and produce it, which is what happened at Billboard with Growing Up Latino is something that I started at Vibe as a editorial tentpole and wanted to produce it as a video tentpole at Billboard. That didn't happen until I left the brand. And so things like that, microaggressions, gaslighting, patronizing, just sort of like circumstances or moments that make you feel like you don't know what you know. That has also been a part of my experience. You also, you asked me about advice, and for me, that's the most important part of this answer. The advice that I want to give other Black and Indigenous Latinas who decide to enter this space, who decide to do journalism, who decide to work for the music industry on any capacity, is one, get your money right. Understand contracts. If you're a freelancer, understand why you should open an LLC. Understand what kind of bank account that you need to be opening. Understand why you need to save 20% of every check. If you are a writer, a journalist in any publication, period, but specifically a huge brand, ask about stocks. Ask if you have options to, if you have the opportunity to have stake in that business, right? You may, but they're not going to tell you. You may, but they're not going to tell you. So I feel like that's a big thing. Identify what you're passionate about, master that, and then evolve it to where you can use it to have bigger impacts in conversation. Collaborate with women at an early stage in your career. Do real intentional collaboration at an early age, at an early stage, and I promise you it will yield something worthy. Collaborating with women, I mean. That for me, that has not, I didn't get to do enough of that for, you know, one reason or the other. So if you have an opportunity to collaborate, do that.
Yes, thank you so much, Marjua. That was great advice. Mary, so your experience in creatively targeting and redefining the U.S. Hispanic marketplace has made you become an expert in securing placements with your sync teams throughout Latin America. From television, films, independent films, trailers, video games. I want to know, like, what has been like your most favorite project, and what about it? Like, was it the creative process or the finishing product?
You know, it's funny that you asked that because I spent, before coming to Warner Chappell, I was at Sony Music for 11 years, and I was hired to develop the sync market for them, right? And so when I arrived, I actually went to pitch, you know, to the labels. I went to Sony, I went to Universal. I just arrived from LA and Miami, and it's very different. Miami and LA are like two different worlds. And actually the folks at Sony gave me a chance, right? But I think, you know, one of my favorite projects at Sony, well, I had a bunch, but one of the funnest ones I had was one night I was able to secure a sync, or I was able to get Romeo Santos on The Bachelor. And it happened to so coincide with a big campaign we did with Dr. Pepper. And I remember I was like at home in my bed on a Sunday night watching ABC and seeing, you know, Romeo Santos on The Bachelor and having him perform and having his commercial happen. That was like, wow, you know, it was like stellar. That was a highlight for me in my career. And another one here at Chappell, believe it or not, is coming up with really compelling ideas. And part of my pitch and being creative, very similar to like what Pamela was saying, is really kind of pushing boundaries and trying new things. You know, I take a lot of risks in what I do. I have to talk to a lot of people. I get a lot of no's, but I get those yeses too, you know, and I get those sense of interest. And one of them that I got to know when I first started was that I wanted to do an outsourcing, being a music supervisor for labels, right? Because music clearance is really complex. For those of you that are interested in at some point learning about sync, it's, you know, it's like this, you know, there's a piece of the music and you got to get those rights cleared. Anytime there's movement, you got to get it cleared and you got to ask permissions for that kind of stuff. And anyways, I went to try to do a pitch to be a music supervisor for a big Sony project, because when I moved from Sony over to Chappell, obviously there's a lot of synergies in the Latino music, you know? Anyways, it got turned down. My boss was out in LA. He was like, it's a little too risky. You know, we don't know what the deals will be like in China. We don't know what it will look like in other parts of the world. So he shut my idea down. But you know what? I still have that idea there. And it's been, you know, 2 years. So I hope to be able to do supervision at some point in the United States for other projects outside of the US with Latin music.
Yes, and congrats to everyone. I'm so inspired by everyone's stories and like just all the resilience that's in this room right now. I'm gonna move on to just 2 questions from our attendees. I know we're passing by our time, but hay gente que tienen preguntas. So I'm gonna move on to Joy. Joy and Adriana, they have a similar question. She's a Black female musician from Africa, and she wants to know what is the best way to navigate the industry and getting the right people to listen to your work. She's currently struggling with getting her music to the right people, and although she's been working super hard at networking and using all the platforms at the disposal, it's been a challenge. Pamela, do you want to start? And then we can move on, sorry.
For any independent artist out there, social media is your best friend, right? Nowadays, with all these new platforms that are being created, we have to take advantage of that. You know, the more people that sees us, the better. We gotta get those eyeballs. We need to get people to see us. Visibility is key. So social media. I'm not sure where she said she lived. I don't know if she's in Africa. She said she's a musician, African musician. But social media, if you're in Africa, social media is your best friend. Try to connect with as many people as possible. Do your research, see who's in the forefront of the industry that can listen to your work, and send them a DM, send them an email. See what happens. Sometimes they won't answer, but maybe one of them will, and they will listen to it, and that's a door that you're gonna open. So taking the risk, that's it for me.
Yeah, I would say to not be precious. I think a lot of people are precious with music, right? And I respect that, and I love that to a certain degree. Because there's this gate that it's like you can be precious with music up until a certain point, but if nobody knows your sound, how do they know what to invest in? Or how to, not even money, just energy, time, resources, right? So you can't be too precious that you hold it back from people, but you can't be too open that like somebody can run with it and take it and do what they will. So do you have our contracts in order? Do you have everything copywritten? Can you go back and make sure that when you are sharing this, that you can track where people first heard it, right? For me, and I think Joy's an incredible musician. It's about finding the right places for people. For resources, just because I can know a lot of people that are A&Rs or do great things, just like the rest of you, doesn't necessarily mean that I trust them or believe them to value a person's work and for what that work is. Like, do they know what to do with that specific person or that specific type of sound or that specific art? You have to, it's about finding that sweet spot, right? And that person that's going to believe. So I agree with Pamela that you have to really be active on social media. With Joy, I know you are. I've connected with Joy prior to this, but I think there are other people that we just have to raise it up. I think you're doing everything right as far as like getting out there, attending panels, raising your voice, asking questions, and that it'll just come. It comes with all of that, right? It's cumulative. It's not just one instance that happens one time and the rest of your life is changed. I think a lot of people think that. But what do they say for every night? So overnight sensation, it was really like 10,000 hours. Like, you know, it's so much work goes into it. So none of us got here in just a blink of an eye. So I think you're doing everything right. I think you just have to continue to show up and getting back to your why. When you ask yourself, why am I doing this? Why do I keep showing up? Why do I want this? That's just going to make you more hungry to be like, how do I connect with certain writers? How do I connect with certain producers? What is Pamela doing? Maybe if I have a certain sound, who do I need to talk to that's an engineer? What kind of DMs do I need to slide into in order to start sharing my music? Is it a private SoundCloud? You know, I get those all the time. That's definitely an effective way to really get your name out there and find the right people who will want to invest in it, for sure.
And I'm just going to add, be willing to collaborate with other people, other types of styles of music. Don't just stick with your own genre. Be willing to kind of, now that we're living like, you know, this fusion of Latin sounds, of African sounds, you know, be willing to kind of like collaborate in that space. I think collaboration is huge.
Marjua, do you have anything to add or?
I don't have anything to add. I'm just a writer. So I'm going to say that I may or may not have a contact that you need. So if you'd like to reach out to me, I may have something that you could, you know, a point of reference that you could engage with. Social media, to Rebekah's point, is a huge asset, obviously. I'm someone who didn't necessarily grow up with the internet. I think I got access to internet consistently when I was like in my mid teenage years. So if I was a writer coming up in this age, I would absolutely like use all the forums to my benefit. But I may have a contact that you may need. So feel free to reach out. That's what I can do.
And how soon do you like explore? I mean, you're such an established writer now, but looking at the writers who want to become you in 10 years, 15 years, 5 years, should she seek out those people to start writing about her, or like, you know, start doing write-ups this early, or what's your advice as a writer there?
Start your own blog. You know, I hate that term too, blog, because there's a weird thing attached to it, but like start your own writing forum. You know, start your own forum, period, right? Like, you know, it's something that I, as a hip hop head, as someone who like grew up on Wu-Tang and grew up on DMX and grew up on Nas and grew up on Jay-Z and Biggie and all of that, Big Pun, rest in peace. A lot of what I've been able to accomplish has been from a source of like individuality, right? Like independence. And so like there is obviously you have to do the work, you have to put in the legwork, you have to put in the effort, like Pamela has mentioned, and everyone on this panel has mentioned. Yeah, you have to make an opportunity where there is none. At least that has been my experience. But on top of that, it's also use your resources, whatever they might look like. They might just be the radio. You know, I'm speaking from a different time, but they might just be a particular like publication or someone that you follow. Which I want to emphasize this: study your predecessors. Whether you're a journalist, whether you're an artist, whether you're a rapper, a singer, a vocalist, a producer, an engineer, study your predecessors. Study who it is that you admire. That is one of my biggest jewels that I always pass down. Study who came before you. And yeah, just that. If you feeling froggy, hit me up, and if I have a contact for you, I'll share it.
I love that. Mary, this is actually for you from Flavia. Sorry if I said your name wrong. But they would like to know, how is the industry different? How is it different in Miami and LA?
Question. From a business perspective, you know, LA, it's like a business of entertainment. Like, la neta, everyone that's there is a hustler. Everyone there is like giving you the, you know, the demo. People talk a big game in this business. In Los Angeles, though, people do it in a different way. You know, they're very much more, you know, the producers are producers, the writers are the writers. Like, there's like these different lanes, right? And everybody's working in LA all the time. I mean, I think Pamela mentioned it, you know, she's in a studio for 16 hours because she loves what she does. Everybody who works in the business and entertainment in LA, they friggin' love it. Miami's a different story. Miami, somos la cuna de música latina, for sure. A&R, everything here. But the business acumen is not quite the same. And I think, Pamela, you can totally agree with me. You know, people here, they think that the business is just going to happen, you know, with who you know. And no, it's different. You got to really kind of work your craft. You have to be you got to be like in tune with a lot of different types of people. And I find that in Miami, it's like this salad of people from the Northeast, from the Caribbean, from South America. So you have like this whole jumble effect. Y la gente que viene de América Latina, a lot of times think that they've arrived. And it's like, no, sorry. Not like in New York, you know, or LA. People, you gotta build that. You gotta work it. You have to kind of build your craft. And that's really the difference, I think.
Thank you, Mary. I'm gonna get ready to close this off and pass this on to Vanessa. I wanna thank you all for accepting to be part of this conversation and sharing your experiences. I'm really happy with how the conversation went and to learn more about how y'all navigated thus far. I wish you all luck on any creative projects or anything that you're working on in the future. And I'm gonna pass this on to Vanessa.
Thank you, Jenny, and thank you so much to all you incredible women for dropping so many gems. I think one thing that we can all take away from today is that education is key, and especially in ourselves and learning from other people's experiences and their different perspectives too. So I just really appreciate all of you for tonight, and thanks to the Digilogue for collaborating with us. We really appreciate it. I've had such a good time planning this. And just thank you to all of the people that, you know, attended the panel tonight. We really appreciate your time. And, you know, collaboration is key, like you all of you women said. So if anyone ever has, you know, any questions or they want more information, feel free to follow the Industry in Spanglish, reach out to me. I'm happy to always keep working and building with women like all of you amazing queens. So thank you.
Thank you, Vanessa.
Thank you, everyone.